So today we will be learning about the tool support for testing. So actually, this is the complete theoretical part. So you have to actually go through the each slide, but in some of the slides, you will see the types of tools are divided under each category. So mainly you have to remember the type of category in which what kind of tool which come, and secondary is like it is mainly explaining about we are having like we can say in-house tools as well. In some of the organizations we'll see like we'll be having some kind of in-house tools for the testing, for making the test plan document and making the traceability metrics kind of document. And we can say we are performing the testing, we are maintaining the test cases, performing the execution. Then for the defect logging, maybe they are using a different kind of tool. So for everything, we will be having a separate kind of tool. So it is mainly dependent on the type of organization. So for example, some of the tools organizations using their by own, and in some of the organizations they are taking the license from the vendor and then allowing its participants to use that particular tool. Now, what is a test tool? So the ISTQB glossary of testing terms defined as a test tool as a software product that supports one or more test activities such as planning and control, specification, building initial files and data, test execution, and test analysis. So the what they are saying, the ISTQB glossary of testing terms define a test tool as. So currently what we are thinking, like what kind of what is a test tool. So we will just think like a test tool is a kind of easier thing to do our task simply. So but in ISTQB they are saying like a test tool is a software product that supports one or more testing activities. So it's a kind of definition in terms of ISTQB. So now what test activities? Such as planning and control, specification is like we can say the test cases management, then building initial files and data, test execution and test analysis. So it's a kind of software product in terms of ISTQB, and which is maintaining these kind of test activities. Therefore, a test tool can be thought of as a piece of software that is used to make the testing process more effective or efficient. In other words, anything that makes testing easier, quicker, more accurate, etc. Now, we have to learn this benefits and risk of using any type of tool. Now, let us consider the building of a new hotel and examine the similarities with the introduction and use of test tools. Test tools need to be thought of as long-term investment that need maintenance to provide long-term benefits. Similarly, building a hotel requires a lot of upfront planning, effort, and investment. Even when the hotel is ready for use, there is still a continual long-term requirement for the provision of services such as catering, cleaning, building maintenance, provide provision of staff to provide ad hoc services to customers, etc. The long-term benefit is that this upfront investment and ongoing maintenance and support can provide substantial income in return. So actually, for example, they are saying a kind of hotel is building. So maybe they can use a kind of tool firstly for the building development. After that, they will definitely require a kind of tool which is maintaining all the data of the customers, staff, whoever working in the hotel. After that, if any kind of ad hoc service will come, then how it will get managed. So they are just explaining us the example. In terms of testing, we already know like for the automation we are using many types of tools currently. For example, we are using the Selenium, okay, for the automation. And we are using so many tools, like currently Kotlin has also come. And in terms of performance testing as well, we are using the we can say we are having the blaze meter. Apart from that, the mainly we are using the J meter for performance testing. So it's a kind of requirement what type of tool we need to require. So it's totally depends on our task. Whatever task is we have to perform, we will check like which tool is easier and how much the cost of that particular tool. It is decided by the organization. For example, say Selenium is an open source tool, so we can directly use it. But in other words, if we have to use the RPA tool, then it's a kind of we can say paid version. So organization has to decide which tool they want. Okay, now uh, they are just explaining this graph, so I just want to explain that. Okay, so now they are just showing this graph for us, test tool payback model. Because if they are using a tool, definitely in terms of the benefit, they will definitely require a more benefit from that. For example, they are using the 4 to 6 resources in our team, and 4 are working on the for example manual, and 2 are working on the automation side. So definitely if any kind of rework will come and we have to execute the same test cases again, and we already have code for that, then it's a cost we can say cost saving thing. Because next time when uh, someone is doing the manual testing, he or she will do only for the new test cases. For the old test cases, they will use just that tool for the execution. Okay, so this is the cost showing in the vertical, and in the horizontal line they are showing length of time for which tool is used. So they just have to check this thing as well, like what is a kind of length of time for which tool is using. So it's testing activities performed manually and testing activities performed using tool. So there can be two things: we can perform the testing in terms of manually, and we can perform the testing by using any kind of tool. And it's a kind of break even point here in the graph. Okay, so now I'm explaining it. Other tools can be built by developers in house as the need arises. For instances, test harness, test oracles, or test data preparation tools may be relatively easy to produce for developers with a good understanding of the tool requirements and the systems and databases in the test environment. Okay, so they are saying like for developers they can use any kind of tool. For example, they have to build a kind of design, they can use a tool to show it in better way. For unit testing, there are many tools available today, so they can just use it to write the test cases and show the report in very well way. So it's a kind of example. Now we have to see the benefits. Now with this diagram, you do not need to worry more about that. It is just a kind of we can say they are showing if we are doing the testing activities performed manually, then definitely cost will be more. And if testing activities we will be performing using tool, then cost will be less compared to the we can say this manual testing. Okay, and in between they are just performing they are just showing us a break even point. We can say sometimes it can happen like for both of the things, manual testing and automation testing, we will having a break even point in which we have to decide like we are not having that much time now, and also cost is exhausted. Then accordingly we have to take the decision. So this is a kind of break even point in which we can say both the things will be exhausted. Okay, so now we have to see the benefits. The main benefit of using test tool is similar to the main benefit of automating any process. This is the amount of time and effort spent performing routine, mundane, then repetitive task is greatly reduced. For example, consider the time and cost of making consumer goods by hand or in a factory. So they are just saying it will take a lot of time to perform the similar task manually, and when we will do it through the automation process, then it will be less time. Now, the time saved can be used to reduce the cost of testing, or it can be used to allow testers to spend more time on the more intellectual task of test planning, analysis, and design. In turn, this can enable more focused and appropriate testing to be done rather than having many testers working long hours, running hundreds of test cases that we already discussed. Like, what is the benefit of that? We do not need like we can say that much resources required, and also it is saving cost as well, because the same test cases you can run hundreds of time if you have already automated that process. Only you need maintenance of that coding, and also we can say if there's any change happen to the software to the old thing, then you have to just update your code in terms of automation. Now, related to this fact that the automation of any process usually result in more predictable and consistent results. Similarly, the use of test tools provide more predictable and consistent result as human failings such as manual keying errors, so misunderstanding, incorrect assumptions, forgetfulness, etc. are eliminated. So they are just saying if we have already uh, made the code of that, then we execute it again, so it's a kind of less human errors, because maybe you are when your software application is big and you are having the around 1500 test cases, so it's not like if you have not maintained it through automation, then definitely when you will be executing your starting 200 to 300 test cases, you will, it's a chance you can miss something. But it is already automated, then definitely it's a less chance of missing the things, because you have already written the code in we can say correct way. Now, it also means that any reports or findings tend to be objective rather than subjective. For instance, human often assume that something that seems reasonable is correct, when in fact it may not be what the system is supposed to do. So they are just giving this example. Now, the widespread use of databases to hold the data input processed or captured by the test tool means that it is generally much easier and quicker to obtain and present accurate test management information such as test progress, incident found of it, etc. See chapter 5. So in chapter 5, as we learned, we are having so many testing activities. For example, we have to prepare the test planning document, the incident management, test cases management, test summary report, test closure activities. Everything we can manage by a tool, so it will be easier. Okay. Now we have to see risk. Most of the risk associated with the use of test tools are concerned with over optimistic expectation of what the tool can do, and a lack of appreciation of the effort required to implement and obtain the benefits that the tool can bring. So what they are saying, we just assume like we are having over optimistic expectations. Like this, we will be totally dependent on that tool, that it will do a good thing or correct thing what we can do. And sometimes maybe the tool is not working and you have to execute 600 to 700 test cases, then you should be having a kind of backup plan as well. In that case, it's not you have to totally over optimistic and you have to just highly expect it from that tool, then it will there will be no dependency and it will work every time in that way only. So you just have a backup plan as well. Okay. Now, sometimes you just choose the tool and you are just thinking like, yeah, this tool will work according to my this needs, but actually you are just now hoping and you are highly expectation, you are having the highly expectation from that tool. So it's not a good thing. You just have to see the limitations of that tools as well, like this can do that much only, and I have to do the things manually for these things. It is not we can do everything via automation. Okay. Now, for example, consider the production environment of most organizations. Considering using test tools, they are unlikely to have been designed and built with test tools in mind. Therefore, assuming that you want a test environment to be a copy of production, or at least as close to it as possible, you will also have a test environment that is not designed and built with test tools in mind. Okay, so they are just saying you just want to build a test environment. Similarly, you are having the production environment. So they are just saying it's not like it's a kind of risk, we can say. We are not testing on the actual production environment, and we, with the help of a test tool, we have just made a replica of test production environment. So they are just saying maybe it's a kind of risk here. Okay. Consider the test environments used by vendors to demonstrate their tools. If you were the vendor, would you design the environment to enable you to demonstrate the tool at its best, or to demonstrate the shortcomings it may encounter in a typical test environment? Okay, so they are saying consider the test environment used by vendors to demonstrate their test tools. So mainly vendors, what they will do, they will just show us the benefits of that test tools, but it's the responsibility that you should ask like what are the shortcomings and what are the limitations of that tool. It is very much important. Okay. Therefore, unless detailed analysis and evaluation is done, it is likely that test tools will end up as something that seem a good idea at the time, but have been largely a waste of time and money. A process for avoiding such problems when introducing a tool into an organization is described later in this chapter. So they are just explaining the risk here. It will not ask such kind of things, and we will not properly take the demonstration and analysis shown by the vendor. Then definitely it's a kind of risk. It will take your more time and cost also, because you are not having the proper knowledge and you have just buy that tool from that vendor. So it's a kind of risk. To avoid that, what we have to do, so we will see later in this chapter. Okay. After a test tool has been implemented and measurable benefits are being achieved, it is important to put in sufficient effort to maintain the tool, the process surroundings, and the test environment in which it is used. Otherwise, there's a risk that the benefits being obtained will decrease and the tool will become redundant. Additionally, opportunities for improving the way in which the test tool is used could also be missed. So they are just saying the same thing, like if you will not use your tool in the correct test environment, then definitely it's a drawback. And also, like, what are the benefits required, it will get decreased and the tool will become the redundant. So you have, for example, you have given the over budget for that tool, and you have just purchased from the vendor, and it is not giving you that much benefits, then there is no use of that tool. Now, for example, the acquisition of various test tools from multiple vendors will require interfaces to be built or configured to import and export data between tools. Otherwise, much time may be spent manually cutting and pasting data from one tool to another. If this is not done, then data inconsistencies and version control problems are likely to arise. Similar problems may arise when testing with third-party suppliers as a result of mergers and acquisitions. Okay, so they are just saying like if we will not properly check the tools, and for example we have purchased two tools from the different vendors and we are just exchanging the data between two tools for the merging or acquisition or any kind of activity, and we have just not checked maybe it will work properly or maybe it will not work properly, then it's a kind of risk. So we have to check everything whatever we are buying, or whether it will work correctly or not. Maintenance effort will also be required to upgrade and reconfigure tools so that they remain compliant with the new platform or operating system. Maybe the tool has made for the Windows 7 or Windows 8 on that time, but now we are using the Windows 10 or Windows 11, and that tool is not compatible and they have not provided any update. Then what is the use of that? So you before buying you should have to ask from the vendor, whether you will be updating that tool in future or not as per the platform capability, or you will just providing the tool for this platform support. So it is also a kind of risk that you should ask before buying it. Now they are just giving a kind of hotel chain scenario, so that you can read it from here. It's a kind of same example, what kind of tool they can use for that hotel online booking. Okay, so we already have the, for example, we have the Oyo, right? Everyone is using that thing, and they have just made it for web as well as for mobile application by which you can book the hotel. So they are just explaining the same kind of tool here. Okay, now they are just explaining a kind of diagram which will be required for the hotel system architecture. So you can say we will be having the hotel based staff, then we will be having the customer service staff, and this is the GUI, graphical user interface front end for the internal staff. Okay, so this is like this GUI front end for internal staff is internally connected with this hotel based staff and this customer services staff. Then we will be having the bank account validation, postcode inquiry validation, BACS. I don't know what is that. I think it's a kind of payment system which we can use, and this is a kind of website and customers general public document output system, and it's a kind of messages which we are receiving with this interconnected architecture. So it's a we can say the example of, we can take the example of Oyo here. We will be having a kind of website and it is internally connected, with all these we can say blocks, and it will show us the all the information on this website. And for every management, every part management, they have divided it in different things. For example, for customer service data, hotel staff data, and bank account validation, and the payment system, and the inquiry system, messaging system. So they are just explaining a kind of architecture here for this system. Okay. Now, in all cases, communication with the mainframe computer is done via a middleware layer of XML messages. So, in this architecture, they are just saying like uh, for every type of communication, they are just using this XML messages mainframe. It is the central heart of this architecture. There's a document production system that produces paper and electronic versions of customer correspondence such as booking confirmation, bills, invoices. So this is a different kind of system which is connected with this central system, which will produce the kind of document after the booking confirmation, bills and invoices, etc. Direct debit and credit card payments are made via BACS. This is a kind of payment system I already explained. So files are transmitted and confirmation and error messages are received back. So whenever any payment is done with this BACS system, so after the file transfer and exchanging, we will get a kind of message in our system like whether it is successful or we are getting any kind of error. Validation and inquiry of address and postcode is also performed by sending XML messages to and from a third party system. So if we have to validate the address, postcode, everything, we are just doing the validation, and in this central message system we are just maintaining the things, whether it is a confirmation or it's a fake code or fake address. So we are just checking everything and storing it in this central messages system. Now, a new release of the system is planned for 6 months' time. This will include, now they are saying, for example, a new release is planned for 6 months' time. This will include code changes to improve performance in the XML middleware layer and on the mainframe. Mainframe changes will be performed by an outsourced development team in India. Various changes to website screen to improve usability. Now in the 6 months, like you got the requirement update and you just have to update this XML messages system. Also you have to change your website to website screens to improve usability. The introduction of a new third-party calendar object from which dates can be selected, the ability for customer to pay by check. Now, currently they are using only that BACS system for credit and debit card payment. Maybe you have to update it for the check payment as well. The automatic production of checks for funds, cancellation, etc. And amendment customer bill plus two other amendment documents, to new output document, fixes to various existing low and medium severity defects. So this kind of things maybe you just have to update in your system in future. So what kind of tool you will take? So in terms of risk and whatever aspects we have learned previously, you just have to remember, and accordingly you have to choose a correct tool. Now this is the check of understanding. Would you expect a quick return on your investment in test tools? Why? So this is a complete theoretical thing which we already learned. Describe three potential benefit of using test tools. So first is the cost saving, second is time saving. There is less risk when we are just using that tool, and we can say we are having less resources required when we are doing the same thing with test tool. So this is a kind of potential benefit. Describe two risk of using test tool. So risk can be, one is like if you are not taking the proper training of that tool and you are just using that, then definitely it's a kind of risk because you don't have the knowledge and you have just purchased. Second thing is like uh, there can be so many risks we already learned, but one can be like it is dependent, platform dependent, and you have not asked to vendors and you have just you are just using that tool. So this is a kind of we can say risk here. Okay. And already we have I have explained about the risk in the previous slide, so you can learn that. Now after that we just have to learn about the test tools, what kind of tools we can use, and they actually divided the test tools in different categories. So you have to remember those categories and type of tools in that particular category. Okay. So I'm just taking a 5 minutes of break. Currently it's 10:43 around. Just join the same call on 10:50. Then we will start from here, test tools. Okay. Okay. So now we will be learning about the test tools in terms of types. Okay. So there are several ways in which test tools can be classified. They can be classified according to their purpose, the activities within the fundamental test process, and the software life cycle with which they are primarily associated. The type of testing that they support, the source of tool, the technology used, who uses them. So we will see the categories of tools in this chapter later. Okay. Now, tool support for management of testing and test. This is the test management tools. Test management tools provide support for various activities and tasks throughout the development life cycle. Some of these activities are supposed by the provision of interfaces to other more specialist tools. For instance, test execution tools. Other test management tools provide fully integrated modules that provide some or all the services functions provided by more specialist tools such as incident management or requirement management tools. So what way they are saying, there can be different categorize for the test management tools. So what can be these categories? We can say we can have the requirement management tool, the incident management tool, or maybe we will be having the test execution tools. Okay, so now you have to see this diagram, which is very much important. So they are just saying this is the test management tool. What kind of test management tool can be there? So first can be requirement management tool, second can be incident management tool, third can be test execution tool, and fourth can be configuration management tool. Now, test management tools provide an architecture for creating, storing, and editing test procedures. These may be linked. Hmm. These may be linked or traced to requirements, test conditions, and risk. Such test procedures can then be prioritized or grouped together and scheduled so that they are run in most effective and efficient order. Some test management tools allow dependencies to be recorded so that tests that will fail owing to a known defect can be highlighted and left unexecuted. This allows testers to be redirected to run the highest priority test available rather than waste their time and the test data they have prepared on test they are certain to fail. So they are just explaining us like for the test management tool, what they are just doing, they are just creating, storing an edited test procedure. So if we are taking the example of we can say we have just prepared the test cases and we have that much type of test data to perform the testing. Okay, but we have not prioritized the test cases, we are just performing the execution. So what we have to do, if we have already prioritized the test cases and we will perform the execution for the critical test cases once, then definitely you will get to know, like you will find the critical defects in we can say early. So this is a kind of activity they are just saying, like if you have just maintained this information in a kind of test tool in which you have just traced the requirement and test cases and also the defect, then in that way you can manage the things in better way. Now, test can be recorded as passed or failed, and usually a test management tool provides an interface to an incident management tool so that an incident can be raised if the actual and expected result differ. Now you have defined the things in the requirement tool. Now you will be having a kind of test execution tool. After that, you will be having this incident management tool. in that incident management tool, you can maintain all your incident in terms of the test case pass or fail. They can be interlinked as well, all the three tools, and in that way you can track the information, like whether your things are working fine or not. For example, you have to check the total test cases execution and how many defects you got, so you can just check both the tools. And uh, for example, like test execution and incident management tool, and in that you can get the information from both the tools. Now, test management tools can provide management information and reports on test procedures passed or failed. The amount of integration with other specialist tools is significant here. For instance, integration with requirement management, uh, and we can say tools that allow reports to be produced on test progress against one or more requirements. Integration with incident management tools allows report also to include analysis of defect against requirements. So this is the same thing which I already explained. These tools can be connected, like the requirement tool, execution, and the incident management tool. Test management tools generally hold data in database. This allows a large amount of reports and metrics to be produced. The metrics produced can be used as inputs to test and project management to control the current project. Now, your test management tools has produced the reports, and we can say a kind of document. So what is the use of that document after you done your test activities? So this can be used by we can say stakeholders, project management, or the other teams, or the other members as well, to control the current project as per the activities done from which they are getting from that report. Now, estimates for future projects. Definitely, you can decide the estimation as well. How much time, how much cost, and everything you can just check from that report. How much we can say resources, how many resources they will require for the similar kind of project. So, all the things they can track from this report. Identifying weakness or inefficiencies in the development or test process that can be subsequently investigated with the aim of improving them. For example, like a developer has made the code and just provided you the build of for the testing without doing the unit testing. So definitely you will get more kind of defects for the simple test cases. So from that report, they can identify, like, yeah, it's a kind of development gap or it's a kind of testing gap. Okay. Test management information report should be designed to meet the needs of a project managers and other key users. It may be necessary to export data to a spreadsheet in order for it to be manipulated into the format required. If required, if the tool is having the capability to export the data into Excel, we can do that, and we can even manipulate the data. A test management tool can enable reuse of existing testware in future test projects. So they are saying a test management tool can enable reuse of existing testware in future test projects. So we can by this test management tool, we can also reuse that same tool or the same data in the future test projects as well. If it's a similar kind of thing, then definitely it will be very helpful in future if we have already prepared the reports for the previous project. Now, use in hotel chain scenario. In the scenario, a test management tool can be used to write down and store requirements for new functionality and subsequently to hold the test conditions necessary to these requirements. So this is the same thing. They can just store the requirement, and they can also store the test conditions or test cases in the test management tool. It can also be used to record whether tests have passed or failed and to produce test management information on progress to date. It can also be used to record whether tests have passed or failed obviously from this test management tool, if we are maintaining the test cases, then definitely via this test execution tool we can execute the test case and provide the data here, like how many test cases passed or failed. Additionally, requirements and test condition from previous development will already exist in the test management tool. So additionally, they are saying like in this tool, your previous data will already exist, and your new data will also exist. These can be used as the basis for the regression testing required. Indeed, a regression pack may already exist. Clearly, the regression pack would have to be reviewed and amended as necessary to make it relevant to this release. However, the benefit is that much of the previous work could be reused, which in turn means that much less efforts will be involved to create a regression pack. Definitely, I already explained it to you. For the regression testing, we can use these kind of tools to maintain all our data, so that in future you do not need to write same test cases again. You can just use the tool for the previous test cases, and also you can see like how many test cases pass or fail. In terms of that, you can just check the confidentiality, and according to that, if any new changes has come, then you can check like how many more test cases are required in that test management tool. So they can be interconnected. We have already learned like requirement tool and also the test execution tool. Now the incident management tool, they are just explaining. Incident management tool, also known as defect management tools, are one of the most widely used types of test tool. At a basic level, incident management tools are used to perform two critical activities: creation of incident report and maintenance of details about the incident as it progresses through the incident life cycle. So, in incident management tools, two things are most important. First is the incident report, and second is incident when we are reporting that incident. So from the starting to end, it should have all the information of that incident. The life, the level of detail to be captured about the incident can be varied depending upon the characteristic of the tool itself and the way in which the incident management tool is configured and used by test organization. For example, the incident management tool could be configured so that lots of mandatory information is required in order to comply with industry or generic standards such as IEEE 1044. So we have learned this in we can say in fifth chapter. Like by this IEEE 1044, there are such standards. As per that, you have to report the incident. So by that you can just check and what is the mandatory information required, and that can be there in that incident management tool. So you can check that, and according to that you have to provide all this information in your incident management tool. In addition, workflow rules may also be applied to ensure that the agreed incident life cycle is strictly applied, with incidents only able to be assigned to particular teams or users. Alternatively, the tool could be reconfigured to require very limited mandatory information, with most fields being free format. So it's not like if incident management tool is providing you 50 fields, that you have to fill all the 50 fields. You have to discuss the things in your organization, and according to that, what are the mandatory things which you want to maintain in that tool, only that information you have to fill. Okay. Now, incident management tools also use a database to store and manage details of incidents. So obviously they are having a kind of database which is maintaining all this information. This allows the incident to be categorized according to the values stored in appropriate fields, such as such values will change during the incident life cycle as the incident is analyzed, debugged, fixed, and retested. It is often possible to view the history of changes made to the incident. So now they are saying it's not like these fields should be fixed. It should be editable as well. For example, if new defect is open, then incident management tool, we can change the information to open. After that, when defect is fixed, then it can be change it to fixed or retested. Whatever is the state, we should be able to edit there, all as well as the history. Now, the database structure also enables incidents to be searched and analyzed using either filters or more complex SQL type query. So, for the more technical side, if someone wants to check the all the data in terms of SQL queries, then definitely he or she can check that. This provides the basis for management information about incidents. Note that as the values held against each incident change, the management information will also change. Therefore, users need to be aware of the danger of using outdated reports. This data can also be used in conjunction with data held in test management tools when planning and estimating for future projects. It can also be analyzed to provide input to test process improvement project. So, what they are saying, there can be a UI. For example, I am just explaining you, there can be a kind of UI in which you can see all the things in terms of incident management tool. And definitely there should be a database in which all this information is storing. So if everything is storing correctly or not, or maybe you have to store thousands or 2000 data in that incident management tool, then you should have to check it should be capable or not. Second thing is, like we can say, we are having the report format, so it's not like it should provide you the updated report. Maybe in your tool there should be a capability like it should be maintaining the old reports as well. So if you want to check everything in history, then you can able to check that. Now, fields in the database structure normally include, so they are just explaining about this, we can say we are having a database, so what kind of fields they can maintain. So first is priority, high, medium, low, then severity, high, medium, low, then assignee, the person to whom the incident is currently assigned, example, developer for debugging, a tester to perform retesting, status, and there can be also a date kind of filter. There can be also, we can say, when we are reporting the incident, there can be a field to attachment as well, the screenshot or the steps to reproduce field as well. So it totally depends like how many fields are there in the database for that incident management tool which we can just use. This would allow management information to be produced from the incident management database about the number of high priority incident with a status of open or reopen that are assigned to, say, Peter Morgan compared with the number of assigned to Brian Hamlin. So they are just saying that maybe there can be two different fields which we have to check. Like one can be priority of the defects, and as per the severity and priority, how many defects are currently open. So this information they can just check with that incident management tool. Now, some test management tools include fully integrated incident management tools as part of their core product, whilst other incident management tools can be integrated with test management, requirement management, and or test execution tools. Such integration enables incident to be input and tracked back to test cases and requirement. So there can be a single tool for all these things like the execution, and we can say this incident management and requirement, or maybe there are three different tools and they should be interlinked, and we can track the information with that integration of these three tools. So they are again just explaining this hotel chain scenario. An incident management tool can be used to raise new defects and process them through the defect life cycle until resolved. So we are having a defect life cycle in which there are different status of the defect. So that incident management tool should be capable of maintain those status. It can also be used to check whether defects or similar defects have been raised before, especially for defects raised during regression testing. If we are performing the regression testing and we have not reported that defect earlier, then definitely someone can question you why you have not reported earlier and you are just reporting it now. So these kind of informations can be checked from that incident management tool. Now, an incident management tool could also be used to prioritize defects so that developer fix the most important ones first. It could also highlight clusters of defects. This may suggest that more detailed testing needs to be done on the areas of functionality where most defects are being found, as it is probable that further defects will be found as well. So they are just saying like incident management tool we can use for prioritize of defect as well in terms of severity and priority. We can just focus on the most critical area first to check the incident, like maybe we will get this kind of defects in the future area of the application. So in that way we can just maintain those things under this incident management tool. Now this is the requirement management tool. The same thing, we have to learn it in detail. So firstly we have checked that incident management. Now we are checking this requirement management tool under this management category. Requirement management tools are used by business analysts to record, manage, and prioritize the requirements of a system. They can also be used to manage changes to requirements, something that can be significant problem for tester, as test cases are designed and executed to establish whether the delivered system meets its requirement. Therefore, if requirement change after tests have been written, then test case may also need to change. Therefore, there is also a potential problem of changes not being communicated to all interested parties. Thus, testers could be using an old set of requirements whilst new ones are being used to the developers. So, we can say we are having the 500 or 1000 requirements for that application. Now, maybe 200 requirements are using by the development teams to we can say develop the code, and another 200 requirements can be used by the testing team to perform the testing. So in that requirement management tool, it is very much important, like we will be having all the requirements as for the developers and testers both, as well as in some of the requirement tool it is the category or the status as well, in which we can just provide the status, like it's whether it's for the developer or whether it's for the tester. In terms of that, we just have to write the new test cases, or whether we have to update the test cases, or we just need to wait for the build. So in we can check the status from the requirement management tool. Now, if for example any requirement gets changed, so definitely you have to keep update in the system. In this requirement management tool, you can just update the requirement, but whether that tool is having capability for the we can say old requirement history, whether it is maintaining any kind of history as we are maintaining the same thing in incident management tool, or uh, which I explained it to you. So there can be also these kind of capabilities in the requirement management tool. The use of a traceability function within a requirements tool and or integrated with a test management tool enables links and references to be made between requirements, functions, test conditions, and other testware items. This means that As requirement change, it is easy to identify which other items may need to change. So mainly if any requirement change, then definitely if your both the tools are interlinked, like your test management tool and the requirement management tool, then you will get a kind of alert like you have written this test case for this requirement, but this got changed. So you will just update the test case for that requirement. Some requirements management tools can be integrated with the test management tools, while some test management tools enable a requirement to be input and related to test cases. So this can be there can be any possibility. Maybe you are having a single tool in which you can define both the requirement and as per the requirement, this is a kind of test case. Or maybe there are different tools in which in first tool you just have to maintain all the requirements, and in another tool you just have to maintain all the test cases. Requirements management tool also enable requirements coverage metrics to be calculated easily, as traceability enables test cases to be mapped to requirements. As can be seen, traceability can create a lot of maintenance work, but it does highlight those areas that are undergoing change. So we can just provide the traceability, the interconnection for the requirement and test cases. Now this is the same use in hotel chain scenario. A change is required to three documents sent to the customers. The requirements are documented in the requirement management tool. Testers obtain the requirement from the tool and begin to devise uh, test conditions and test cases. uh, it is actually revised. They have just provided this word incorrectly. A subsequent change control means that further changes are made to the requirements. The testers should be made aware of the changes so that they can provide inputs to the impact analysis. However, traceability within a requirement management tool will also highlight the test conditions affected by the change requirement. The testers can review the change in requirements and then consider what changes need to be made to the test condition and test cases. Now, if you are having a kind of traceability between your requirement and test cases, then definitely if you are getting alert like these 15 requirements are changed and I have written 50 test cases for these 15 requirements, then you can check your impact analysis, and according to that you can convey your things and you can just update your test cases for those requirements, so that new traceability matrix will be created. Okay, so this is for the requirement management. Now we will see the configuration management tools. Okay, so configuration is mainly for the we can say version maintaining of the document. Okay, configuration management tools are designed primarily for managing the versions of different software components that comprise a complete build of the system, and various complete builds of system that exist for various software platform over a period of time. So, Minju and Jayanti, in configuration management, it's not like we are just maintaining the document version. We are also maintaining the software application versions, as well as we are just maintaining the tools version as well. So it's not like we are just maintaining only the documents here. We can maintain every kind of element version here in this configuration management tools. Okay.
Okay.
Now, a build is developed a build is a development activity where a complete system is compiled and linked so that a consistent system is available at any time, including all the latest changes. So when you are working in any organization, then definitely you see like it's not like developer needs to change everything to provide you the build. They are just they are already having a system. They are just deploying the code and build is created, and then they will provide it to you. Okay, now this is used in hotel chain scenario. Within the hotel booking system, there will be many versions of the subsystems due to the date at which the version was included in a build. So now just see this example. This is the table configuration traceability build for integrated system. So you have received three builds from the developers. Versions of payments. They are just defining payment system version. Then check test procedure ID. They are having these versions. Then BACS file, which we have used for the payment system, they are just providing these three versions. So we can maintain all these versions in that configuration management tool, whatever builds we are receiving from the developers for each component of the system. The same principle applies to testware with a different version number of for a test procedure being used. So they are just explaining this table in the text way here. Okay. Now we have to check the amount of benefit to be obtained from using configuration management tools is largely dependent upon the complexity of the system architecture, the number and frequency of builds of the integrated system, how much choice options is available to customers, whether internal or external. For example, a software house selling different versions of a product to many customers who run on a variety of operating systems is likely to find configuration management tools more useful than an internal development department working on a single operating system for a single customer. So it's a very complicated kind of text they are defining. I'm just explaining you what is actually there. So you are using a configuration management tool, but it is if it is not easy to see all the data for your builds, for your documents, then what is the use of that configuration management tool? There should be not so much complexity, there should be easy UI also. The information should be shown in a proper way so that you can track all the information. They are just explaining the same thing. Now the use of configuration management tools allows traceability between testware and builds of an integrated system and versions of subsystems and modules. So the same thing, configuration management tool can also be interlinked with all these three tools, which is the test execution tool, second is incident management, and third one is requirement management tool. So in that way, if any kind of requirement in change, test cases change, then there should be a traceability between that configuration management tool for the build provided. If you are having 50 requirement and developer is providing you the particular build version for those 50 requirements or 100 test cases, then it should be traceable in this configuration management tool. Identifying the correct version of test procedures to be used. So what is the use of this traceability? We can identify the correct version of test procedure to be used, determining which test procedures and other testware can be reused or need to be updated or manipulated. Now assisting the debugging process so that a failure found when running a test procedure can be traced back to the appropriate version of a subsystem. For example, developer provided you a build 1.1.0. Now it is completely failing. You cannot start your testing. Then he or she will provide you the next version 1.0.1. Then definitely you can track back for these requirements and for these test cases how many build version you got. Okay, so this kind of tracing you can done from here. So now they are saying what is traceability. So traceability is like traceability is like interlinked or interconnection or tracking of the interconnected system for these four kind of management tools. Which tool is likely to be most closely integrated with a requirement management tool? So which tool we can say most likely to be used? So with requirement, the most likely used tool should be we can say test. conditions or test execution tool, because we are tracking requirement with the test cases. Okay, which tool would you use to identify the version of the software component being tested? So for the version, we are just using this configuration management tool. Okay. Okay, so now we have to learn this tool support for static testing. In third chapter, we have learned about the static testing, correct? So now we have to check like what kind of tools we can use for this static testing. Now we are having a review process there. So for reviewing the things, what kind of tools we can use? Review tools, also known as review process support tools, provide a framework for reviews or inspections. This can include maintaining information about the review process, such as rules and checklists, the ability to record, communicate, and retain review comments and defects. Now the ability to amend and reissue the deliverable under review, whilst retaining a history or log of the changes made. Traceability functions to enable changes to deliverables under review to highlight other deliverables that may be affected by the change. The use of web technology to provide access from the geographical location to this location. Now, uh, for what is it to what is the use of this review tool? So in review, we already checked that we are having an author and we are having the inspection team for conducting the meetings, then provide maintaining the documents, every for these kind of activities. For everything we can just use the mail, or maybe it is very important if we are using a kind of review tool. So in that way, we can maintain the information or track the information in very well way. Now, if we are providing a traceability also, like for this requirements, we have done this kind of review meeting, then it will be really beneficial. Also, we can say we can use a kind of web technology in which we can access that review tool from any geographical location. Now, review tools can interface with configuration management tools to control the version numbers of a document under review. So this kind of question may be asked in the ISTQB, like review tools. For review tools, what is the most appropriate type of tool we can use for the traceability? So you have to choose the answer as configuration management tools. Okay, so just remember this. Now why it is that, like for the configuration management, we are just maintaining all the version. So if we have to review that thing, then definitely we can refer that tool. So that's why it can be interlinked. If reviews and inspections are already performed effectively, then a review tool can be implemented fairly quickly and relatively cheaply. However, if such a tool is used as a means for imposing the use of reviews, then the training and implementation cost will be fairly high, as would be the case for implementing a review process without such tools. These tools support the review process, but management buy into reviews is necessary if benefits from them are to be obtained in long run. So it's like we can say for the review process, it's not like we have to buy so much highly cost effective tools. We can also buy a simple kind of tool to maintain this review process. So it's totally depends on your organization, how much budget they want to allocate for this review process tool. Review tools tend to be more beneficial for peer or technical reviews and inspections rather than walkthroughs and informal reviews. So it's not required, like if you are having the walkthrough or informal kind of reviews, just a short discussion, then definitely there is no use to use no use to there's no need to use this kind of review tools. We can just use the meetings for the short discussion. But if you are having a high complicated project and you are having this review meetings frequently in terms of technical reviews and inspection, then definitely it will be very beneficial to use such kind of tools. The same use in hotel chain scenario. The hotel company could use a review tool to perform a review of a system specification written in the UK, so that offshore developers can be involved in the review process. In turn, the review program code written offshore could also be performed using such a tool. This means that both the UK and offshore staff could be involved in both reviews, with no excuses for the right people not being available to attend. So it's not like for the technical review, we can take the example of code review. Okay, maybe offshore team has made a code and it can be reviewed by some of the developers from the UK team. Then, if you have to backtrace the information like this kind of code is reviewed previously or not, you can just use this review tool to check that this code is reviewed by that person. Okay. Now we are just checking this static analysis tool. Static analysis tools analyze code before it is executed. We already checked, like for the static analysis, we are not performing any kind of execution. We are just checking, like before, uh, we are just checking the requirement document is correct or not. We are just checking the all the things available, the environment, everything is mentioned in correct format or not. So we are just analyzing the code here. We are not just actually developing or executing the code in the static analysis. So what kind of tools we can use here, or what is the main use of a static analysis tool? Therefore, they are used mainly by developers prior to unit testing. A static analysis tool generates lots of error and warning messages about the code. Training may be required in order to interpret these messages, and it may also be necessary to configure the tool to filter out particular types of warning messages that are not relevant. The use of a static analysis tool on existing or amendment code is likely to result in lots of messages concerning programming standards. A way of dealing with the situation should be considered during the selection and implementation process. For instance, it may be agreed that small changes to existing code should not use the static analysis tool, whereas medium to large changes to existing code should use the static analysis tool. A rewrite should be considered if the existing code is significantly non-compliant. Okay, so now if we are having a kind of code and we are not just performing any kind of execution, and developers just need to check whether the standards are meeting or not for this kind of code, so definitely they can use a kind of a static analysis tool for that, to check the warning messages in their code when they are developing the things. So this is a kind of static analysis tool. They are not performing any kind of unit testing. They are actually just checking whether their code is meeting the particular standards or not. Static analysis tools can find defects that are hard to find during dynamic testing. Dynamic testing is simply the perform the execution of that code. Okay, so if we can avoid that warning messages or the standards in the code itself, then definitely when you are having a bulk code, then you should not get such kind of defects. They can also be used to enforce programming standards, improve the understanding of the code, and do calculate complexity and other metrics. Some static analysis tools are integrated with dynamic analysis tools and coverage measurement tools. They are usually language specific, so to test code written in C++, you would need to have a version of a static analysis tool that was specific to C++. Now, for example, you want to develop your code in C++ language or Java language, or we can say Python language. So the static analysis tool should be supported that language first. Then you can check the standard of that code. You can also integrate that static analysis tool with dynamic analysis tool. So when you perform the execution of that code, then you can check it is working fine or not in terms of standard. Now secondary, you can say when you are performing the unit testing, you have to check the code coverage is proper or not as per the requirements you have defined. Then you can also use that static analysis tool. Now other static analysis tools come as part of programming languages or only work with particular development platforms. Note that debugging tools and compilers provide some basic functions of a static analysis tool, but they are generally not considered to be test tools and are excluded from the ISTQB syllabus. Okay, so this is very important to remember here. Like compilers and debugging tools are come as part of static analysis, but in terms of ISTQB, they are not considering it's a part of static analysis tools, which debugging and compilers. Okay. Now, the type of defect that can be found using a static analysis tool. What kind of defect we can found? Syntax error, examples, spelling or missing punctuation, variance from programming standards, like uh, any kind of a standard is defined and you are not just using it, you're just doing the code in your own way. Then definitely it's a kind of variance or fluctuation. Invalid code structure, you're using missing and if statement. For example, as per the standard for any kind of if else loop, you have to define if and else both the loop in a condition, but you are just providing only if condition there. Then definitely you are not following the programming standard. The structure of the code means that some modules or sections of code may not be executed. Such unreachable code or invalid code dependencies may point to errors in code structure. You have defined so many variables in your code and you are not using those variables. Then definitely you are just using the memory of the system, and it is not as per the standard. So this kind of errors you can found. Portability, example, code compilers on Windows but not on Unix. So in terms of compiling, you are just checking the code compilation. What is code compilation? Code compilation is like making a build. You're just compiling the code. So for that, you have checked only on the Windows and you're not just using or checking it on another platform, for example, Linux system on the Unix system. Then this kind of errors you can found here. Now security vulnerabilities, definitely if any kind of security thing is missing in your code in terms of standard defines, then definitely you can check that. For example, if you're using a Java language to make your code, then definitely there are some standards as per the Java if you're defining any kind of class or variable. So you have to follow these kind of standards, otherwise you will get so many warnings and it will create a problem in future. References to variables that have a null value or variables declared but never used. So it's a kind of technical thing. When we are defining a variable, whether we can assign a value to the variable or we cannot assign the value to that variable. If we are just defining the null value, so definitely you will get a kind of exception when you will be executing your code. So you should have to avoid this kind of we can say situations. Now the same thing used in hotel chain scenario. Static analysis tools may be considered worthwhile for code being developed by uh, offshore development teams who are not familiar with in-house coding standards. Such tools may also be considered beneficial for high-risk functions such as BACS and other external interfaces. So in the hotel chain example structure we are having this BACS, or we can say this payment system, or the other interfaces like the UI. So if you are not following a particular standard as per the in-house standards defined, then definitely it's a kind of violation. And when you are providing your code for the code review in terms of this static analysis tool, then definitely you will get a comments on your code, and you have to just again rework on that code to correct that. So these kind of tools you can use. So now any kind of doubts in this static analysis tools, or we can proceed further?
We can proceed.
Okay. Now this is a kind of modeling tools. So previously we have learned, now how many tools we have learned? First is the management tool. Under that we are having the four categories, and after that we have just checked this static analysis tool. Now we are just checking this modeling tools. So, modeling tools are used primarily by developers during the analysis and design stages of the development lifecycle. The reason modeling tools are included here is because they are very cost effective at finding defects early in the development lifecycle. You both have to remember every category of tool, what is the type we are using. So modeling is mainly using at the time of designing phase. Okay, so modeling tool is mainly used by the designing team. They are just they are just checking the errors in terms of we can say design document. Okay, their benefits are similar to those obtained from the use of reviews and inspections. In that, modeling tools allow omissions and inconsistencies to be identified and fixed early, so that detailed design and programming can begin from a consistent robust model. This in turn prevents fault multiplication that can occur if developers build from the wrong model. Now, if you have not defined the design structure properly, or you have not defined the model properly, and you are just starting to build your code, then definitely you will get the error, and maybe it will uh, a kind of more rework, and it will be more cost effective. So you have to use this kind of tools to check your design errors before providing that design to the developer to build the code. For instance, a visual modeling tool using UML can be used by designer to build a model of the software specification. The tool can, so it's a kind of language UML by which developer are just by which designers are creating a design document, or we can say they are just providing the design structure with this UML tool. So this kind of tool is a kind of example for this modeling tool. The tool can map business process to the system architecture model, which in turn enables programmers and testers to have a better common understanding of what programs should do and what testing is required. So, for example, for that in hotel diagram, we see we are having different components, and they are interconnected, and what kind of messaging system they are using. So, everything, if they have defined in a better way in design document or in designing tool, then it is very beneficial for developers and testers both to develop the code and test the code. Similarly, the use of database, state, or object models can help to identify what testing is required, and can assist in checking whether tests cover all necessary transaction. Integration with test design tools may also enable modeling tools to support the generation of test cases. Now, uh, we are having this test design tools. If we are just integrate those tools with this modeling tools, then definitely we can achieve a great success. For example, you are having this. we can say database management tool, by which you are just providing the architecture of your database. And if you have integrated with this your system architecture modeling tool, then definitely you can check and you can trace the progress, or you can check like for this system architecture whether I have defined the database in proper way or not. So in that way you can also integrate both the things in this modeling tool. Now used in hotel chain scenario, the modeling tool could help to identify missing scenarios from letter templates, or the need to update letters with new paragraph. Again, the benefits of a clearly defined, consistent model of the software will assist offshore companies to develop software that meets the requirements of the customer. The use of modeling tool is particularly used in complex system architecture such as this scenario. So that we already checked, like if we are having a complex system architecture which is using many things, then definitely we have to use a kind of modeling tool for the design. Okay, now check of understanding which of the tool used for static testing is are most likely to be used by developers rather than testers. So what they are asking, what which of the tools used for static testing is are mostly likely to be used by developers rather than tester. So it's a kind of debugging tool, uh, which is using by the developers, not by the testers, which we have learned. Now, in which part of the fundamental test process are static analysis tools likely to be most useful? So we have checked that fundamental test process, we are having the different activities, that planning and control, then analysis and design, implementation and execution, which we learn in chapter 2. So just to check all the five phases and try to provide answer of this question for this static analysis tool, in which process you can use that. Okay, now, what is the significant benefit of using modeling tools from a testing perspective? So, from a testing perspective, if we are having the proper system architecture available, or the database design is available, then it will be very beneficial for us to perform the testing if we are making the proper designs of these things. Now, we have to learn this tool support for test specification. Test specification is, we can say, preparing the test cases. Okay, so what kind of tools we can use? So first is test design tools. Test design tools are used to support the generation and creation of test cases. In order for the tool to generate test cases, a test basis needs to be input and maintained. Therefore, many test design tools are integrated with other tools and already contain details of the test basis, such as modeling tools, requirement management tool, static analysis tool, test management tool. So, with you can integrate your test design tool with all these kinds of tools available, like static analysis, test management, requirement management, modeling tools, so that you can trace back your test cases with every kind of tool available. The level of automation can vary and depends upon the characteristic of the tool itself and the way in which the test basis is recorded in the tool. For example, some tools allow specifications or requirements to be specified in a formal language. This can allow test cases with inputs and expected results to be generated. Other test design tools allow a GUI model of the test basis to be created and then allow tests to be generated from this model. Now, if you are having a kind of test design tool, so what should be your expectation? Now if you have integrated with this requirement management tool and you have defined your requirement in very formal way with the actual and expected result, then definitely when you're integrating with this your test design tool, then it will automatically fetch the expected and actual result from that requirement document for that requirement management tool. Okay, now, some tools, sometimes known as test frames, merely generate a partially filled template from the requirement specification held in narrative form. The tester will then need to add to the template and copy and edit as necessary to create the test cases required. Now in some of the requirement management tools, they are not providing it in formal way. Then what you will do, you will just copy the things, paste the things in your test design tool, and you will need to edit that to show it in very formal way, because test cases should be in very correct way. So in that way you can not just copy paste the thing from that requirement analysis tool, you have to edit those things. Now, test design from database, object, or state model held in modeling tools can be used to verify that the model has been built correctly and can be used to derive some test cases. For example, if you have integrated your test design tool with your modeling tool, so definitely you are having a database kind of model. When you will be writing the test cases related to the database, then definitely you will be having a more we can say coverage, and you will be having more information to write the test cases if you are have integrated this with modeling tool. Some static analysis tools integrate with tools that generate test cases from an analysis of the code. These can include test input values and expected results. A test oracle is a type of test design tool that automatically generates expected results. Just remember this. Maybe you can get this kind of question: what is test oracle in ISTQB? So a test oracle is a type of test design tool that automatically generates expected results. Okay, it's a kind of test design tool only. So maybe you will get a kind of question like test oracle will come under which category of test tool? So it will come under the category of test design tool. And second question may be what is test oracle? So it's a kind of tool which is automatically generates the expected results. So this kind of question you can you might be get in your exam. Now, however, these are rarely available as they perform the same function as the software under test. Test oracle tend to be most useful for replacement system, migration, regression testing. So test oracle is mainly using in these three things, which is replacement systems, then migration of the database, we can say, or this is the replacement, migration, and regression testing. In this, we can use this test oracle. So just remember this thing, okay? Now, use in hotel chain scenario. A test oracle could be built using a spreadsheet to support the testing of customer bills. The tester can then input details for calculating bills such as the total bill based on the various transaction types, refund, VAT, etc. The spreadsheet could then calculate the total bill amount, and this should match the bill calculated by the system under test. Okay, now in this example, let's try to understand this. For example, in the test oracle, what they have done, they have already defined a spreadsheet in which it is automatically calculating the bill if you are providing the data into that spreadsheet, and you have written the test case in your test design tool. So what you will do, you can check from that spreadsheet, like for these kind of bills, how much like we can say which kind of output should come, and also how much total bill can be come. So in that way you can use this kind of test oracle. Now, however, test design tools should be only part of the approach to test design. They need to be supplemented by other test cases design with the use of other techniques and the application of risk. Test design tools could be used by the by the test design tools could be used by the test organization in the scenario, but the overhead to input the necessary data from the test basis may be too great to give any real overall benefit. However, if the test design tool can import requirements or other aspects of the test basis easily, then it may become worthwhile. So they are saying maybe test design tools you have to input everything manually, or maybe if it's integrated with other tools, for example the requirement tool, then definitely uh, it's very beneficial for you because you can track the information and you just not have to define everything manually. Maybe some things will automatically come in your test design tool. Test design tools tend to be more useful for safety critical and other high risk software where coverage levels are higher and industry defense or government standards needs to be adhered to. Commercial software applications like the hotel system do not usually require such high standards, and therefore test design tools are of less benefit in such cases. So they are saying in some of the domains, for example healthcare domain, or if it is related to banking or payment, then these kind of test design tools will be more beneficial. But in some areas, for example in this hotel scenario, it is not required to use this test design tool. We can use that, but it is less worthwhile to use because we can maintain the test cases in excel sheet as well. Or if it is more complicated, then we can use this test design tool. Now, we will be having this test data preparation tool. Test data preparation tool are used by testers and developers to manipulate data. As the name suggests, it can be used by both developers and testers, not only testers. So if you get this kind of question, test data preparation tool can be used by whom? So answer will be both developers and tester, because both can manipulate the data so that the environment is in the appropriate state for the test to be run. This can involve making changes to field values in database, data files, etc., and populating files with a spread of data. So the same thing, they are just manipulate the files or data by this test data preparation tool. Now, the same use in hotel chain scenario, a set of test data may be created by taking say 5% of all records from the live system and scrambling personal details so that data is protected, and to ensure that customer letters being tested are not wrongly sent to real customers. So what they are saying, like we can use a set of test data with this data preparation tool, and we can find the 5% of all the records from the live system. If we want only 5%, then definitely we can define a kind of algorithm in our data preparation tool, and we can just check that, and in this hotel scenario we can get the data. Now, check of understanding. What is the main difference and similarity between a test frame and a test oracle? So that we have already a test oracle, I have already explained it to you. Now, similarity of test frame. Test frame is like a kind of we can say the same test design thing. So it's a kind of we can say the similarity, and for the difference you just have to read the same thing again to find the difference between test oracle and we can say the test frame. What types of inputs can a test design tool use to generate test cases? What type of input we can use? First will be the requirement document. We can use for the test design tool. Second, we can use this data interpretation tool as well for the data which we want to use under this test design tool. So third thing will be modeling tool. We can take this we can say the design or system architecture with this modeling tool, and we can prepare the test cases under this test design tool accordingly.